Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. Right now, in a certain part of the world, there's some really big things going on. Something so big that it's going to have lasting and massive implications. I'm going to talk about that, what it is, and what it means for us in the future. So stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back. So we have a massive world event going on right now, as you can see in the video playing behind me. There is massive protests going on throughout France and other parts of Europe. The mainstream media isn't even picking up on this. I don't know why, but they don't want to tell you what's really going on. Now, I don't want to get political in this. I try not to. However, to understand Bitcoin, to understand the monetary policy, you got to understand the politics. So I'm not trying to get super political here. I'm not going to dive super deep into that, but we're going to take a look at this event. We're going to talk about how this plays into this global trend, and you'll see what that means. So let's jump right into it. So enough of this in the background. It's pretty gruesome. If you haven't already checked it out, like I said, I'm not going to try and fill you with my views on this political mess, but I would recommend that you take the time to try and dig up as much information as you can. All right. Now, like I said, mainstream media really isn't covering this really well. You can jump in on Twitter. You can just search like #Paris, and it's really just local people reporting this. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, hopefully you're still with me. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this has massive implications for us in the near future and definitely over the long term. Now, here's a quote that I really like, and this is why we're going to look at this quote right here. So the key to riding the waves is to understand the forces that move the masses. All right. The key to riding the waves is to understand the forces that move the masses and then know approximately when a society will reverse and head back in the other direction. All right. That's what we're talking about. So we want to ride the wave. We want to be with the trend. We want to invest in the trend, right? We don't want to invest against the trend. I mean, yeah, we want to be contrarian, but we want to invest in the trend. We want to ride the wave. So in order to do that, we have to understand the forces that are moving the masses, and that's why you have to understand some politics. A lot of people think politics is kind of like taboo these days, and they don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to try and fill you with my views, but we have to understand the politics. We have to understand the forces that move the masses, all right? And then what we want to do is we want to time it somehow. We want to know approximately when a society is going to reverse and head back the other direction. So societies move back and forth, and if we can understand the underlying reasons or forces why they move and when, then we're going to be much more successful. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, now, like I already showed you on the video, Paris is burning. That's what's going on. Now, well, I have my reasons as to why I think mainstream media isn't covering this. This is not a narrative that they want you to know about. I don't know where you are in the world, but you might have seen over the last week or two in Mexico and the U.S. border, there was a few thousand immigrants trying to break into the country, and that got massive coverage. But here we have 30, 50, maybe even 100,000 people protesting. It's getting zero coverage. So anyway, Paris is burning. But more importantly for this video, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean for us? And like I said, I don't want to get super into politics, but we have to break this down to understand, because this is something really big, and I'm going to break it down. So again, not talking about politics, but we have to understand it. Now, why? So that's what we want to understand. Why? What are the forces that are causing people to move? Why is Paris protesting? All right. So you have the French nationals, and they're protesting, and any media attention coverage that they've picked up so far, they want to tell you it's because of tax on gas. That's it. They say, oh, they're going to increase the tax on the gas. And that's it. They make it sound very simple. And yes, that's part of it, but it's actually something much bigger. All right. So it's really about globalization. So the French, the European, the whole world, the European Union and France are moving to globalization. So bringing kind of like this one world order, like all the governments kind of controlling one thing. And France has extremely high taxes. Now, if you're in the United States, the taxes are crazy high. Over 50% of your income would go to tax if you're in the top tax bracket. And as bad as that sounds, in France, it's 75%. It's crazy. And the people living there, they can't really they can't cover their cost to live. In the United States, a gallon of gas could be anywhere around $3, $2 to $4. In France, it's over $6. And the wages are a lot lower, and they're being taxed so hard, it's really hard for these people to live. And what's worse is that so much money, so much of their tax money is being taken away, and it's being used on programs that they don't support. So a big piece of this is the reason for the tax is because of these carbon credits. So there was recently this Paris Accord. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, was criticized for pulling the United States out of this Paris Accord. And now, because of this Paris Accord, they have to impose all these carbon taxes, and they're adding more tax to the people. And the people are enough. Like, you can only push them so far until they've had enough. All throughout thousands and thousands and thousands of years of civilization, it's always the same story, right? The government continues to grow so big and so oppressive until finally the people can't take it anymore and they revolt. We had the French Revolution. You've heard the famous, let them eat cake. And this is basically the same thing. So the taxes are too high. The money that the taxes are going for do not represent what the people want. And there's another bill on top of that. There's this UN Global Compact for Migration, and that's supposed to be voted in on December 10th, just a couple days away. And this is another huge bill that's going to open up the borders, make it so migration can move freely through Europe, and it would actually be a crime to even say anything bad about that. I mean, how crazy is that? A crime to even say anything bad about a law that you wouldn't agree with? So anyway, these are the issues. It's not just another little tax. It's a lot of stuff. And so basically what's happening though, and again, I don't want to dive into the politics, but just stick with me, please, a little bit longer. It's going to make sense. What's happening is they are bucking centralization, all right? Centralization. They're rejecting centralization. Now, if you've been following me for a while, we talk about Bitcoin, we talk about blockchain technology, we talk about how it's decentralizing power, right? So that's why this makes sense. So hang on. So all these people in Paris, what they're really protesting is centralization, globalization. They want independent sovereignty again, all right? That's what's really going on. Now, this is nothing new. As I said, thousands of years, it's always the same cycle. And it's really somewhat predictable, because now, over thousands of years, we've started to figure out how these cycles work and when they work. So really, it's not that the world is changing. The world is just going through cycles. It goes up and down. So we have these 80-year cycles. So there's this book. I read this book years ago, and I don't even know, many years ago I read this book, and I had to dig it back out this week and kind of go through a couple things, because years and years and years ago I read this book, and it's just crazy how it's all coming into pieces right here. So basically, this book called The Pendulum, they talk about how there's 80-year cycles, and you move, the pendulum swings back and forth, and you have these 80-year cycles, and they go from a me cycle where it's all about me to all about we or me. So me being decentralization, or we being centralization, or they call it collectivism and individualism. So any of those words, collectivism, individualism, centralization, decentralization, me and we. So 80 years goes back and forth. So that means in 80 years, we go from one to the other. So in the we cycle, the globalism, the centralization cycle, it was 1783, 1863, 1943, and then it will be again in 2023. And the me cycle, about me, the decentralization, was 1823, 1903, 1983, and then it's going to be again in 2063. Now, to give you some examples, the book obviously really gets into this, so if that sounds interesting to you, I'd recommend to read the book. But here's just a quick little snippet. Of course, this goes all the way back to hundreds of years AD, and I'm only going to just talk about the last couple cycles, because you don't want to sit here for that long. Now, the centralization cycles, the centering of cycles, we can look at like 1783. The U.S. had just won the Revolutionary War, and then 3 years later, the founding document of the United States started out to say, we the people. So So that's we. We're centralizing. We the people. The U.S. Constitution was written, and that was right in the upswing of a we cycle. Now, going back just real quick, you look here. So it's a 40-year lag, but it doesn't. It's trending up and it's trending down. So even though you're not at the exact peak, you're still in the upswing or the downswing, if that makes sense. Now, we also had 6 years after the peak of that was 1789, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. It's the document of the French Revolution was written. All right, so right around the same time as the U.S. won the war, the Revolutionary War, we had the founding documents, and then the U.S. Constitution, and then a couple years later, we had the French Constitution, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So these are all civil rights things, all around this this concentration of this centralized cycle. And then the next cycle, 1863, we had the Gettysburg Address. That was Abraham Lincoln, and he stated all men are created equal. So it's all we. And then right in that same time, 1865, it was a French professor that said, he made a comment that talked about if ever two countries could get together and work together, that inspired the artist that created the Statue of Liberty. And of course, that was the French, and it gave that to the Americans. They worked together to put that together. The next cycle was 1943. That was, again, Hitler. He went out on a campaign, promoted I am okay, you're not. That's a centralizing theme. We had Joseph Stalin. Again, this was when communism was taking over, and it was collectivism. It was trying to bring everyone together. Also, the UN, the United Nations, which is a big piece of what we're talking about. The UN was formed in 1945, so 2 years off of the peak of that 1943 peak. We also had the European Union, which actually wasn't created until about in the early 90s. However, in 1946, which was 3 years off of the peak, Winston Churchill called for a U.S. of Europe, basically joining all of Europe together. And actually, the Council of Europe was established in 1949. So even though the EU wasn't formally introduced until the early 90s, it had actually started way back at the peak of the we cycle. It just didn't go down. And then, of course, 2023 is going to be the next one, which isn't that far away. We're about 5 years away from that. So we're, these are, like I said, you're nearing the top and you're coming off of the top. So within 5 years of either direction, you're right really in the peak of that. So we're 5 years from the very peak of the we cycle, and we're really at the peak of the we cycle today. Now, we have the decentralizing cycles, all right? That's the me cycles. All right, the decentralizing. So 1743, we had Ben Franklin, entrepreneur, publisher. He wrote the Poor Richard's Almanac, and that was from 1732 to 1758. So that was right around the peak of the decentralizing cycle. 1823, we had President James Monroe, President of the United States, and he stated the U.S. will not be subject to any more European powers. No more European power. So he was rejecting working together, and now it was all about me again, right? The U.S. accepted responsibility of being a protector of Western nations. We're not with you anymore. We're on our own. The next cycle, 1903, again, me. Teddy Roosevelt was the president, and his quote was, "Speak softly, carry a big stick." Again, that's kind of personal stuff. Led Rough Riders to victory to San Juan Hill, received Nobel Peace Prize. The next cycle, 1983, President Ronald Reagan, he went to Berlin, pointed at the Berlin Wall, and told Mr. Gorbachev, the Russian president, to tear the wall down. Again, no more we, this is about me. The U.S. Army slogan was "Be all you can be," but they realized that didn't work, and they had to change their slogan, and they went to Army of One, more of a we focused. And then the next one is in 2063, and we don't know how it's going to be. So that's interesting. But what does all that mean? All right. So back to what's going on in Paris. All right. So basically, we have two different groups that are protesting there. There's two different groups, and they are both angry about the same thing, and they both want the same thing, but they both want it in a different way. All right. So the pendulum is swinging back and forth from centralization to decentralization. As I just demonstrated with those dates, the pendulum has been swinging to centralization. The world has been getting more and more centralized. The EU, the UN, all these things, just more and more and more. But now the pendulum is ready to start swinging back to decentralization. That's the big thing. We've been centralizing, and now we're ready to start decentralizing. And we know this, and we can see already evidence of this. We can see that Brexit was formed. So, Britain wants to get out of the EU, Brexit. We had the Italian referendum in Italy. In the United States, Donald Trump was elected because he was supposedly not part of the establishment. So already we're starting to see hard, concrete things. And now Paris is just one more sign that shows the world is rejecting the centralization, the globalization. They're rejecting that, and they want to move away from that. All right. Now I'm going to tie this back into investing. So hang on. Hopefully you're liking this. This is stuff I'm super fascinated about. I think it's super important. A lot of people may just want to know, like, what do I buy? How do I invest? But I think, as I showed in that quote in the beginning, if we can understand the forces that move people, we can always have success. And so this is what I'd want to know if I was on your side of the table. Hopefully you're liking this. I put a lot of time and effort into it. Make sure to give me some thumbs and some likes on this video. Like I said, I put a lot of time, and I do this for you guys. And the more likes I get, the more I dig in and give this to you. Also, as you guys probably already know, I answer every single comment. Make sure you leave comments. I love to have conversations there. Nobody's an expert here. We're all trying to figure this out together. We do that by discussing these ideas. So if there's anything that you hear that it sticks out to you, or you'd like to hear more about it, just what I'd ask is just put the little time code in the comment, leave a comment, let's have a discussion about it. Everybody would like to hear that discussion. So leave me comments, leave me thumbs up. All right, now back to this. So there's two different groups protesting, and I'm going to tie this in. All right, there's two different groups protesting. They all are mad about the same thing, and they all want the same thing, but they don't know exactly what's causing the problem, so they don't know how to fix it. So they're both mad that the lower class is getting taxed to death. They don't have enough money to live and survive, and they don't get the representation they want. All right, now that's what they're both mad about, and they both want that to change. They both want this lower class to have a better standard of living. The problem is that because they don't really understand what's causing that problem, they don't know the right way to fix it. All right. So what it is that one side thinks that less government is the problem. The government's too involved. The government's taking way too much money. They're taking our money away and squandering it on stuff that we don't want. We need smaller government. That's the answer. The other side says, no, we need more government. We need the government to basically take over everything and redistribute everything. So one side says we need to take away all these advantages they have so the bottom half has an equal opportunity, where the other side says let's steal everything from the top and just give it to the poor. And I'm not going to get into the politics on this. I'm trying to avoid it, so you can decide which side you're on. But that's basically the debate. Now, the reason why we're diving into this is because at the end of the day, it's always about the money. Everything comes down to the money. And, I see people on Twitter all the time and they say, oh, why do you always have to bring in the money? Why always Bitcoin? It's not the answer to everything, but it kind of is. Money is really at the root of pretty much every problem that we have. And so this is about the money. So because there's a lack of sound money, it's created this distortion. Because the United States, the French government, the EU prints unlimited amounts of money and unlimited amounts of debt, it distorts all these markets. It enriches all the people at the top, and it steals value and wealth from the bottom. They don't have the assets that go up in value. Whatever money they make is being squandered away. Their taxes are constantly being raised, and it's because we have a lack of a sound money. All right, that's it. It creates, when they can print unlimited amounts, it creates inflation. As more money is created, that inflates the money supply, and it makes the remainder of the money worth less. It creates these runaway spendings and these deficits that go up, and it steals wealth away from people. It creates out of control government spending, which then creates higher taxes, and there's higher and higher and higher. As a matter of fact, these protesters are demanding a lot of stuff from the government, and the government's like, hey, we're willing to consider everything. But the one thing they can't consider is what the people want, which is lowering the taxes. They can't do that because they've spent so much money. They have so many welfare programs, they can't do that. And it's all because of this distorted market, because there's lack of the sound money. Now, here's where all this ties in. There's a new technological shift We have something today that's brand new. It's a brand new technology, all right? For the first time in human history, this technology allows us to transfer value, hold, store, and transfer value, censorship resistant and immutable. It can't be manipulated, it can't be inflated, it can't be seized, stolen, it can't be any of that. What that does is that brings the power and the control back to the people. Now, everybody could use this hard sound money, but nobody can manipulate it for their own good. Nobody can steal it from the people, and so forth. And what that will do is that will limit the power that governments have, because now the governments won't be able to just continue to print more money and inflate, which is theft. You know, it's counterfeit. When they make more money, it's counterfeiting. It's decreasing the value. It's stealing money away. And so we had this massive shift to centralization, and now the pendulum is swinging back to decentralization. So it's a massive global shift, and at the same time, we have a technology that for the first time in human history will give us the ability to do that, and it fits right along with the narrative. That's how powerful this is. And what it really is going to do is it's going to level the playing field, all right? Like I said, the way that the money system works today is the rich get richer because they're at the top. They get the money first, they get it at zero interest, they can do whatever they want with it, and the people at the bottom suffer. They've lost all their purchasing power, their money's lost value, they can't save, and they can't get ahead. They're taxed to death. All right, so what this does is it takes that away and it levels the playing field. All right, now what this does, and this is what I think the people want. Like I said, there's two groups out there, and what they really want is everybody to have an equal opportunity. Right now, they believe that the bottom doesn't get a fair shake. They don't get a fair shake at life, and that the rich just keep getting richer, and it's true. But if they can take away all that manipulation that happens at the top, they level the playing field, and now everybody has an equal opportunity. But here's an important part, and this is where the distinction is between the two groups. An equal opportunity for everyone, but it's an equal opportunity, not an outcome, but just a chance. So see, one side says, let's steal from everybody and redistribute so everybody has an equal outcome. The outcome, once I've redistributed everybody's wealth, the outcome is that everybody's equal. The other side says, no, let's give everybody an equal chance at getting there. The reason why this is important, actually I'm going to show you this next slide and we'll talk about this. Milton Friedman was one of the great thinkers. He talked a lot about free markets. I'd highly recommend reading up on anything that Milton Friedman put out. But he put out this quote that I really like. And he says, a society that puts equality, so that's what everybody wants, equality, right? Equality in the sense of equality of an outcome. So that means they want the outcome to be equal, all right? If they want the outcome to be equal, if they put that ahead of freedom, they'll end up with neither equality or freedom, all right? So it's not that the outcome has to be equal, it's that everybody needs an equal opportunity. And the reason why that's different is just unfortunately the way life is, some people are going to work harder than others. Some people have more time, some people have more responsibility, some people are smarter, some people are lazier, and it just is what it is. That's just life. So what we can hope for is that everybody has an equal opportunity. What they decide to do with it, what the outcome is, that's up to them. Now, what does all this mean to us? All right? So we want to invest in the trend, all right? Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, it's going to be massive. It's going to change the world. And we know this because it's part of the trend. Right now, the world has been penduluming to centralization, and now the pendulum is shifting back to decentralization. It's going to take 40 years to go from peak to peak, 80 to go round trip. So over the next 40 years, the world is going to be trending to decentralization. That's the trend. Whenever you can invest in the trend, it's like paddling down a stream. It's easy. You don't want to paddle up a stream, and you don't want to invest against the trend. So the trend is decentralization. The technology, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, is also trending to decentralization, and they're coming together at the perfect time. So it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, 40 years from pendulum peak to peak, but it's happening. Bitcoin is not a fad. This is why, and I've kind of started this new campaign. If you're on Twitter and you're following me, #1 Mark Moss, and I've been starting this hashtag Why Bitcoin. This is why. This is why Bitcoin. It builds into the narrative. It builds into the pendulum swinging of decentralization. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Invest with the trend, and you'll have success. All right. That's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed it. To your success. I'm out.